Hey heroes, welcome to April Book Club. So excited for you to join me on this journey of developing grit. In fact, hopefully you've already started on this week's challenge, which is the Embrace the Suck challenge. So David Goggins talks about doing something that sucks every day. And the idea behind it is just to get yourself mentally in a place where uh, reacting against things that suck or making proactive progress is just very natural for you. So, like for this week, I'm eating seafood this week. I haven't eaten seafood in about 30 years. I hate the taste of it. I hate the smell of it. Tonight I had shrimp stir fry and I felt gross afterward. Now I understand why vegans can't eat meat, but I'm going to keep doing it because seafood is healthy and I need to be a big boy. Uh, Last year, I did things like eating a raw tomato, taking a parkour class, even though I felt super awkward, eating bug ice cream. So, what are some things you can do this week just to challenge yourself? Things that you put off, things that you avoid, things that take you out of your comfort zone, just to mentally get yourself a little bit grittier. All right, let's jump into the book. So, we're going to talk about two things. Why is grit important, which is the first section of the book, and how do you develop more grit, the second section of the book. The third section of the book talks about developing grit in others. It's more for teachers or parents, so we're not going to be covering that in our book club. All right, this is a really good teaser into why you need grit, and it's a little nice infographic on how many times you should try something. So Steven Spielberg applied to USC 3 times and then dropped out to become a director. And now the film school at USC is named after him. So that's pretty cool. Tim Ferriss's book, which is now a millionaire bestseller, whatever, New York Times bestseller, was rejected 25 times by publishers. That's a lot. I don't know if I could submit it more than maybe 5 or 10 times and then just give up. The author of this infographic made searches for this data 162 times. The founder of Pandora.com, I mean, it's an older music site now, but they made money, approached 300 investors before getting funding. Richard Branson launched 400 companies before Virgin Galactic. Colonel Sanders, I think that we've all heard, or many of us have heard about how many times he got rejected trying to sell his recipe. This is crazy. Sylvester Stallone was rejected 1,500 times when he tried selling his script and his self for Rocky, which of course started his career. Dyson, that's a good one. The Dyson vacuum cleaner. He created 5,126 failed prototypes before selling his very famous vacuum. And everyone knows Edison. 10,000 prototypes of the light bulb, or as he used to put it, I learned 10,000 ways not to do it. So the idea that comes across here is that to really be successful, you need more than just talent. And Angela Duckworth really pursues this in her book. She says that grit is the combination of passion and perseverance within a long-term goal. So there's a lot going on there. It's not just talent. You can be good at something and not love it. You can be good at something and not persevere in the long term. You probably know people, I know I do, that maybe are really talented, really gifted, but for whatever reason, maybe it was too easy for them. They weren't interested. They weren't motivated. They never really got anywhere with it. So I would actually challenge you, think about someone who is really successful in some area that isn't gritty, and you probably won't be able to do it because I would argue that you have to have grit to be successful. If you're just innately talented, but you don't have, let's say you are a gritty, or you're a very talented gymnast, but you don't have the grit of, say, Simone Biles to go in and work 35, 40 hours a week in the gym, you're probably not going to get there. There are probably people that were more naturally gifted. I know for her body type, there were definitely people who literally told her, your body type is not right for gymnastics. Even Marta Karoli, the coach initially told her, well, you'll be a good tumbler, but you'll never be a great all-around gymnast. Of course, she is now considered the greatest women's gymnast of all time. So there you go. What is grit? Where does it come from? And how do you get it? Well, as we just talked about, it can be partially attributed to genetics. So maybe the initial talent or interest was there, but the rest can be developed. And especially important is just like a muscle, you can strengthen it. So you need to practice regulation and resilience. And we can strengthen those qualities by what we do. A couple of things that we can do is optimism. So optimism goes hand in hand with grit. The grittier you are, the more positive that you're going to react to failure. And that's crucial. As we saw in that infographic, gritty people get told no all the time. And if you just take all that negativity in and get down on yourself and say, my book sucks, my art sucks, I'm no good at cold calls, I'm never going to make $1 million. Well, you know, that old Henry Ford saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Angela Duckworth directly talks about this whole idea that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to really master something. And she breaks it down in a bunch of different ways. One is people who play instruments at a professional level. And some people are able to actually get to mastery much sooner. And some people, even after 10,000 hours, still are just mediocre. And what's the difference? Well, it's not necessarily about practice, but intentional practice. So you can't just go in and do the same thing over and over. You have to constantly self-correct. Simone Biles in her autobiography talks about a couple of years where she calls it her bratty years, where she would go into the gym and just kind of fling herself around, do her routines. She was sort of rebelling against her family and against a lot of the pressure. And she didn't really get that great during that time. You know, you really have to be willing to not only put in the hours and perform, but have that introspection. And every time you do something, every time you make a piece of art, or every time you make a cold call or give a speech or design a product, that you then turn around and evaluate how you did. What did I do right? What can I do better? So it's constant iteration. Very strong indicators of grit. And Angela Duckworth found this indicator when comparing college entrance exams with her grit scale, and which was a better predictor of whether students would stay in college. Having deep commitments that you remain loyal to for years and giving up things to focus on those commitments are both strong indicators of grit, but they also kind of tell you where you need to go if you want to get grittier. These are some things that you should be doing: committing to longer term projects, maybe weeding out some things to focus on your commitments. So grit is a long-term view. It's an important trait for achieving long-term goals, and it actually has physiological and psychological impacts. It can help you with your physical memory and abilities down the road. All right, so that's it for this week. Let's discuss a couple questions about grit and where you need a little bit of help. And then next week, we're going to discuss how to get grittier. So where do you need to practice the power of perseverance? Where do you need more of this? And how can you be more gritty this week? All right, I'm going to let you chat and discuss in your groups, or if you're watching this online, please leave a comment below. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon, heroes.